Hey guys, we're live here. I'm Brian Krassenstein, and this is Eddie
Hey,
Krassenstein.
Krassenstein right here.
We have a lot to talk about today. Just give it a few seconds here for some people to get in this live feed and set things up here, and we'll be ready to go in just a second.
So what are you planning on talking about today as far as Michael Flynn and there's a lot of rumors swirling about Michael Flynn, right?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of rumors swirling about Michael Flynn. It's mostly coming from the right side of the media. The Federalist, I think, had a story about it earlier in the day, and that kind of spawned several other stories from right-wing media outlets. We'll start with the whole Flynn guilty plea. Basically, what's being said by the right-wing media, especially this morning, it all launched with a Federalist article which claimed that Michael Flynn should be or may be about to pretty much try and have his guilty plea overturned. The whole story starts with a judge named Judge Sullivan, and Judge Sullivan basically issued what's called a Brady order, and a Brady order basically tells the prosecution that they have a certain amount of time to turn over all evidence that might be beneficial to a defendant or the defendant's possible sentence.
And this comes after Flynn already pled guilty. That's worth noting too.
Yeah. So that in itself is suspect. But basically, what the right's saying is that this is going to give Flynn's defense all this new information, including this FISA warrant that they got Carter Page on, which they claim is delegitimate, which more than likely isn't true in itself. Basically, it's using a conspiracy theory to delegitimize another conspiracy theory, and it's just a line of conspiracy theories. This whole Flynn is going to rescind his plea deal is not true. It's not going to happen. I could almost guarantee it.
Well, you also have to keep in mind that a lot of people on the right, including Michael Flynn Jr., Michael Flynn's son, is calling for Trump supporters and Flynn supporters to take to social media and basically ask Trump to pardon Flynn and others who have been indicted, such as Manafort and Papadopoulos. They're basically trying to push Trump to issue pardons at this point in the investigation, so that would impede the rest of Mueller's investigations. But you got to keep in mind, if Flynn was to be pardoned right now, along with Rick Gates and Paul Manafort, they would have no reason to cooperate with Mueller any longer.
Yeah, and basically, accepting a pardon is basically admitting guilt. So in and of itself, that would pretty much show that Trump's trying to cover up
yes, because these indictments, although they're not specifically related to Trump, I'm sure Mueller has evidence of things that link the whole campaign together.
Well, and part of this whole new conspiracy theory that launched this morning from the Federalists, they're basically saying that one of the pieces of evidence confirming this conspiracy is that there's been a delay in sentencing for Michael Flynn. And that's Mueller requested 90 days because he's not ready for sentencing. That has nothing to do with them finding new evidence that Flynn's innocent or that Flynn's going to rescind his guilty plea. It has everything to do with Mueller not ready to sentence Flynn because he's still cooperating with Mueller. He's still giving Mueller information, and based on what evidence and information that Flynn gives to Mueller, that's going to weigh in on the sentencing later down the road, which probably won't be for months.
Well, we also have to remember that the only charge that he's pleading guilty to is lying to the FBI, and
there's probably 3 months.
It's blatantly obvious that there's other crimes that Mueller could have indicted Flynn on. such as not registering as a foreign agent when he was working for Turkey. He was also involved in a plan to kidnap a government official in Turkey. It's Mueller could. I'm sure Mueller had other evidence to get him on other crimes, and to me, this says that Flynn has been willing to cooperate with Mueller as far as.
And it's just ignorant to believe that he would have pled guilty to a crime if he wasn't guilty of that crime. It's saying that he's going to rescind his guilty plea is just ignorant. Why would you plead guilty in the first place if you were innocent of something? It's just
Exactly.
stupid. It doesn't make sense. And just ignore all those posts because it's not happening. The guilty plea is in place. It's not going away. And one other thing is that Flynn has been cooperating. We know Flynn has been cooperating. His guilty plea was months ago. It's not like he's just sitting idle waiting for something to happen. Mueller's been getting information out of him. He's not going to now come out and say, I'm not guilty of something.
Well, yeah, and it's also too late to pardon Flynn because he's probably already talked.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pretty much assume that he's given Mueller a lot of information thus far.
Oh, absolutely.
So, should we move on?
Yeah, but first I want to say, if you have any questions for us, tweet using the Krassenstein Live hashtag. That we'll be going through those and taking questions. I'll type it out. Chat's unavailable, it says, so I can't do that right now. But it's Krassenstein Live hashtag, and we'll answer those questions as they come along.
So another thing, last week when we were doing our show, it was on, what day?
I think it was Friday.
No, it wasn't Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct.
Last Wednesday we were doing a show, and as we were doing the show, all this news came out about the Parkland school shooting. And we weren't really able to talk about that.
We weren't prepared. We didn't really know the details, but we've learned a lot.
Yeah, we tried talking about as much as we could at the time, but it was basically minutes after everything came out in public's eye. So right now we're in a situation where there's a lot of debate about what should be done in order to prevent attacks like this from happening again in the future. And, there's the people on the left who say, outlaw the guns, outlaw guns, don't stop selling guns. And then there's people on the right who say, we need our guns to protect ourselves. And, we're never going to outlaw guns, at least not in the next century. The Second Amendment forbids that, and I don't think there's going to be an amendment to supersede that amendment anytime soon. So guns are staying, but the Second Amendment doesn't say that you can own assault weapons. It doesn't say you can own semi-automatic weapons. So there's a lot of debate going into how you can fix this problem. Those on the right are saying, okay, maybe we can do have more strict background checks, or maybe we can limit the sale of guns to people who have a history of mental health illness. I think we're going to have to meet somewhere in the middle, and I don't think the people on the right are going to be too happy about that, and I don't think the people on the left are going to be too happy with that. But in my opinion, if we can do anything to limit the possibility of this happening,
if it saves one life, it's worth
it. If it saves one life, it's going to be worth it. I don't think AR-57s should be legal.
AR-15s.
AR-15 should be legal. I don't think assault weapons of any kind really should be legal for purchase. They're intended for military use, target practicing, and murdering.
Well, these weapons were banned in 1994 under President Clinton, and then they overturned that ruling. So, in that, I think it was 1994 to 2000, maybe it was. Deaths from assault weapons drops pretty significantly. So we know it's going to save lives. So
you look at it's obvious. You look at the countries that have super strict gun laws. You look at the UK, you look at Canada, you look at Australia, and their mass shooting deaths are virtually none. There's virtually no mass shooting deaths and very, very few gun deaths.
No.
So what's the common denominator? It's not that there's more crazy people in America. We're all humans here. It's that guns are easily able to be purchased. They're able to be purchased by children, basically children, not legally, but a 19-year-old can walk into a gun store and buy an AR-15. At the same time, you have to be 21 in order to walk into a gun store and buy a handgun.
or a beer.
or a beer. If we're not deeming our youth to be responsible enough to drink alcohol at the age of 19, why should they be able to own a gun that can kill hundreds of people in a matter of minutes? It doesn't make sense. It's just stupid. And the NRA is behind a lot of this. They fund the GOP candidates for the most part and push their agenda onto them. And I mean, voters have a say, gun owners have a say, but it's just ridiculous. Like, what's more important to you, having fun with your AR-15 at a target range or saving one life? Sure, you might not, in your mind, you're not a killer, so I understand that. But the more guns out there,
somebody could steal that gun and use that gun to kill somebody.
exactly,
You don't know what's going to happen.
You just don't know. And do you really think all of these mass shooters, when they bought those guns, said that they're going to go and kill people? Probably not. You know, most of them buy a gun because they like guns. Most of them want to use them for target practice, and then they get an idea, and that idea turns into
or they just snap. They snap. They have mental issues.
Yeah, which is why I think there should be longer waiting periods when you're buying both guns and ammunition. I think that's a given. I don't see why there shouldn't be a waiting period.
The point is that we don't have to give up our right to bear arms, and also not protect lives. But basically we can
There's middle ground here that can be reached.
And middle ground that we were living through it in 1994. We banned assault weapons, and it worked, and we saved lives. And then the Republicans got back in office, and they re-implemented
through the NRA. You know, the NRA pushed this. They wanted to make more money, so it's just what happens, and in my mind, it's disgusting. At the same time, mental health's an issue too. I think mental health should be something that the government takes more serious action for. Don't you think everybody should, before getting a gun, should have a mental health exam?
Yeah.
Do you think that? Do you see a problem with that? Why not?
No.
Like it's not.
To the NRA, it's just one more step in creating an environment where people aren't going to buy as many guns, which means less money, which means less. You know, they're not.
Well, I mean, people are prohibited from driving cars because they have mental health issues. You know, it's like everybody with a mental health issue doesn't know they have a mental health issue. Everybody with a mental health issue is not diagnosed with a mental health issue. So in order to buy a gun, why don't we make these prospective gun buyers get a mental health examination?
Yeah, and I'm sure there's issues where people may have been deemed mentally unstable for one reason or another. There's several instances where you could be deemed mentally unstable, and 10 years down the line, you're fine. You can be reevaluated, and if you pass that evaluation, then maybe you can purchase a weapon. But you can't just say anybody with a mental health issue can't purchase a weapon.
Well, there has to be guidelines, and that's what Congress's job is to do: is come up with these types of guidelines that meet halfway between the far right, far left, and the moderates. They need to come up with ideas. They need to come up with an agenda and push it forward instead of just ignoring it and criticizing people like us for politicizing the deaths. We're not politicizing the deaths. You're ignoring the deaths.
I mean, it seems like every month there's another mass shooting. When is it time to discuss this? Do we have to wait another month before we can discuss it, and then another gun massacre happens? It's there's always a time to discuss it immediately. I don't care if it offends you because we're discussing it.
Yeah, why don't you do this? Why don't you ask the victims' families and friends if they consider it politicizing this issue when we immediately say something needs to be done? Is it politicizing it? Okay, maybe it is politicizing it. If it is, who cares? It's better than monetizing it like the NRA and the GOP are doing.
Oh, yeah.
Politicizing or monetizing? What's better?
Yeah, exactly. Dark Snake just said, if I'm ever shot and killed, immediately politicize it.
I feel the same way. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
And what really got under my skin was the fact that the president used this massacre to basically tweet that it's a mental health issue. Well, you're the one who basically signed a law allowing for people with mental health issues to purchase weapons. Of course, the White House won't release a video of him signing this now because it's too much of a political burden, I guess. But he's the one that basically said if you have a mental health issue, you can now buy guns. And he's the one, the day of the massacre, I think, tweeted that it's a mental health issue. You're right, it is a mental health issue, and it's a gun issue, and it's an issue that you helped happen.
Well, I mean, you listen to the kids of Parkland, Florida. All those kids who were in the school when the shooting went down, like the Emma Gonzalez's, and what else? There's a few of these kids. That Anthony Borges, he's in the hospital. The story of Anthony Borges, he was shot 5 times trying to save the lives of others. He got up and shut the door to keep the kid with the gun out, and in doing so, he was shot 5 times. He was also, there's stories coming out that he was also using himself as a human shield for others, and he saved 20 lives. And he's struggling for his life right now in the hospital. But there's Emma Gonzalez who's come out, and she's become like the spokesperson for the entire school, and she's been attacking Trump and Rick Scott, the governor of Florida, and Marco Rubio, the senator here in the state of Florida. And then there's other students. Let me see here. There's Sarah Chadwick who's come out with, and she's become kind of a icon on Twitter for some of her tweets. Yeah.
And there's also Cameron Kasky. He's also been one of the guys who's been on a lot of CNN and MSNBC interviews. And you know, it's like why should the NRA have more say in what we do when it comes to guns than the victims, like these kids who are coming out and doing, they're politicizing it because they saw their friends get killed. I mean, you can't criticize them for politicizing. You can't criticize anyone for politicizing this when the politicians are doing absolutely nothing. The only ones not politicizing it are the politicians who are the ones who are supposed to be politicizing things.
Instead, they prefer to monetize it.
Well, and I can't say that because Democrats are definitely using
this. And there's a few Republicans who are coming out in support of better gun laws and more strict gun laws. And I think these are the guys who are standing up against the NRA. You know, it's like, all right, the NRA might be giving them some money, but it's like there's a time and place where you come out and say, this matter is much more important than me getting reelected to office. Why are these politicians running for office? They're doing it to make a change in America. They're not doing it to just get reelected every 4 years or every 2 years if you're a congressman. You're doing it to make a difference in the country. So what's more important, getting reelected by your followers and those who are on the far right and support the NRA, or is it about saving lives and making America a better place?
Yeah, no, I agree. And too many politicians are in that area where all they care about is getting reelected, getting the NRA's funding, and then somehow profiting off their office. Yeah. And hopefully in November this all changes. Hopefully people wake up and they realize that unless they vote for certain people, this problem's just going to keep persisting.
Yeah, it's sad to see this happen over and over again. It's like the last mass shooting we saw. We're like, okay, well maybe something can be done now. Maybe America's woken up and there'll be some regulations put in place. Maybe the deaths will take more. Will prove to some of these senators and congressmen that they are more important. These lives are more important than the money that's coming into their pockets. But then again, a few months go by, and it's like it never happened.
Hopefully, this will be the one that changes it. But I can't say I'm incredibly confident that it will be. But I do think that some Republicans are starting to kind of inch closer to the left.
Well, and there's a march that's being formed. It's called March for Our Lives, and that's taking place on March 24th, and it's happening all around America.
Yeah, there's other events too in April. There's a class walkout, I think, on April 20th. So it's the kids the children in America are the ones taking the initiatives, while the adults and the politicians.
And so many of these kids don't even have the right to vote yet, which is sad, you know.
All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to the whole Rick Gates plea deal that's said to be going on.
You can do yours.
I'm sorry. Okay. So Rick Gates is yesterday. The L.A. Times reported that Rick Gates will be pleading guilty, and in effect, he's going to flip on Paul Manafort. Now, this is a big story, a very significant story in the whole Trump-Russia saga in two ways. First off, Rick Gates was almost attached by the hip to Paul Manafort. So even if Paul Manafort doesn't flip, which I'm not too certain Robert Mueller even is aiming to have Manafort flip. I almost feel that he believes that Manafort committed too many crimes to just give him a lenient sentence. I think that Rick Gates might be able to provide everything Manafort could.
Well, Manafort seems very hesitant to flip. I don't think he has.
Well, he's relying on a pardon, but we'll talk about that. That might be a bad thing to rely on anyway. But anyway, Rick Gates was pretty much attached by the hip to Paul Manafort, so he knows a significant, if not a majority, of what Manafort knows.
Yeah, Gates worked with Manafort before they were on the Trump team together.
Since 2006, they were working together.
So they did stuff. Does that cover Ukraine?
Yes. When they worked, they had a business together. Manafort Davis, it was a company that they both worked for, which was, I believe, was an investment firm which they invested in Russian and Ukrainian enterprises. So let's backtrack. Rick Gates and Paul Manafort have known each other for 3 decades. They've worked hip and hip since 2006. Now, Rick Gates also was the deputy chairman of the Trump campaign. So that he was pretty much the number 2 guy at the Trump campaign. Well, to Paul Manafort.
Well, and he's indicted back in October, which it seems like it just happened. It seems like Gates and Manafort were just indicted yesterday, but it actually happened way back in October. What's that now? 4 months ago?
Yes, and Rick Gates, while Manafort in August left the Trump campaign, Rick Gates actually stayed on board for several months after that. He was actually seen at the White House 9 months after Manafort resigned.
So it's conceivable he knows even more than Manafort when it comes to
absolutely.
Russia.
But basically, Trump has been in communication with Gates and Manafort for many, many months after Manafort left. And Gates knows what Manafort knows, in addition to whatever else was discussed. He was one of the key members of the Trump campaign. He also worked for the Republican National Committee after Manafort left, and he helped with funding for the Trump campaign. So he knows a lot of information. He probably knows a great deal of information regarding the entire when they changed the RNC's platform to exclude the Ukrainian. They were going to help Ukraine, and they changed the platform to exclude that part of it, which was something Russia would have loved to have happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he knows if there was a quid pro quo, and assumingly he knows that.
Yes, and you got to keep in mind this guilty plea that they're saying that it hasn't been officially made yet. The plea deal hasn't been made yet, but it's expected sometime this week. And according to experts in the field, they say that the fraud charges that he's probably going to plead guilty to will end up giving him approximately 18 months in prison. And if he actually did fight this case out, the experts are saying that it probably would have cost somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million. And you got to keep in mind, Gates is married. He has 4 children.
Young children, I believe.
Yeah, and it's something he wants to avoid. I'm sure he's getting a decent deal out of this, too.
Yeah. Ed is better than Brian. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
I did kind of stutter on that quid pro quo thing. But why don't we go over to the Krassenstein Live questions and comments and we can answer some of those questions.
Let's see here. What do we have?
once again, if you have any questions for us, feel free to tweet with the hashtag Krassenstein Live.
Dougie Fresh, I remember you from last show, Dougie. He asked, how do you feel about how vocal students are being about this latest gun violence controversy? Do you think it will make a difference? I think it's going to make a huge difference. This isn't something we've seen before. The previous school shootings, there are some students who've come out and talked, but they haven't really taken it to the next level, like Emma Gonzalez and the other kids at the Parkland High School are going. I think they're taking it to a level where it's basically making the GOP congressmen and senators pay attention, especially in Florida. Especially in Florida, where it's kind of a purple state. I think it's important.
Well, yeah, and congressmen, senators, they don't want to look bad, and clearly, if they're going to be speaking against these children, it's not going to be it's not going to be very good for them in the long run. There's going to be some blowback, I'm sure. I'm glad that the younger generation's kind of taking charge on this, because it doesn't seem like anybody else is willing to.
Yeah, the younger generation they have a clear mind, and they can see what's going on without the influence of politics. I think that's what's really driving this.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's another question. Let's see. I guess this is more of a comment from LimixN321. He says, Emma Gonzalez, David Hogg, and many others give me hope. What makes their message more powerful is how clear, spoken, intelligent their message is. And I agree. It's clear because there's no influence of politics involved. I think that's a big thing. Sure, their family probably pay
They're
attention
speaking
to
from their heart instead of their pocketbook, like many politicians do.
Yeah. Tony Ragusa says, can you please stop with the mental illness rhetoric? Violence isn't a product of mental illness. It's a product of anger. Mentally ill people aren't killers. Angry people are. Yeah, I agree to an extent, but at the same time, I think mental illness can play a role. There's a lot of different mental illnesses too. I mean, every mental illness isn't going to make you.
Yeah, I don't feel you can make a blanket statement like that. Why I agree that mentally ill people aren't violent all the time. Most of the time, they still can be. On some occasions, it depends on it's person to person. It's not just a blanket statement.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different mental illnesses. Are you talking about bipolar disorder? Are you talking? It's like the list goes on, and there's different illnesses.
Most serial killers are mentally ill, so you can't.
I respect your opinion there, but I respectfully disagree. Let's see. Refined Noise says, ban any guns designed for warfare. Number of kills divided by least amount of time. That's a good argument. I think that kind of covers assault weapons. Wouldn't that be an assault weapon?
It's not cut and dry in that, for instance, the bump stock, you add that to a gun and it multiplies the fire rate by 10.
and it's not just the bump stock. Like everybody keeps referring to the bump stock over and over again. Oh, just outlaw the bump stock and we won't have this problem. But there are other ways to modify guns, and I've heard some ways that are things you can take duct tape and a little piece of metal and you can modify a gun. You can take a 3D printer and print a modification.
Yeah.
You can probably print something similar to a bump stock on a 3D printer. So it's not as easy as like black and white. Something needs to be done, and I think we just need to start somewhere and see how that works and progress from there. I think an assault weapon ban is step number one. I think mental health evaluations.
Well, I think a database of all gun owners is something that we need to.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that would be incredibly valuable. It gives law enforcement something to go on, something to track down leads, track guns. A database that ties basically a gun registration list along with mental health
exams. You know,
Yeah, along with the serial number of the gun,
Yeah.
along with all that stuff, and I think new technologies are also big. You use your thumbprint to open your iPhone. They have that technology for guns now. Force all new guns.
all new guns, but then there's all the old guns,
Yeah.
and that's an issue too. It's like these guns are gonna last forever. The ones.
Well, and you can't just say anybody with a AR-15. You have to turn them in. They just have to cut it off. Say stop producing AR-15s.
You can
no new sales. Maybe.
Well, you can legalize the right to own an AR-15, and you could have a buyback program where
it's just not going to be easy to implement.
No, absolutely not.
People are going to own them and not turn them in.
Yeah, but you implement a buyback program and combine that with a stiff penalty for anyone who owns one, and you'll get some of them sold back.
Yeah,
No,
I agree.
Let's see. Sam Price asks, how do we create a better background check system while maintaining rights to privacy? Rights to privacy? I don't know if rights to privacy are that important when it comes to a database that's maintained by the government.
Have a gun.
For gun ownership.
I'm all for privacy. I think it's incredibly important, but there's so many databases already that are incredibly more intrusive than just something that says if you own this gun.
The government knows when we own a car. They know when we own a house. Why can't they know when we own a gun? I don't see why privacy should be any more strict for gun ownership than home ownership or car ownership. If anything, I think it should be more strict.
Yeah, I mean, it's they know if your information's out there everywhere. That type of database is small potatoes compared to everything else out there. It's like not even something I would be worried about.
Yeah, I agree. Any more questions, feel free to tweet at us with hashtag Krassenstein Live, and we'll get to your questions. I still have a few more here.
Okay.
Maybe for now we can move on to some more topics.
I had another topic to... I did. There's another topic that I wanted to discuss, and that is Trump's impeachment and his ability to pardon, say, Paul Manafort. We discussed Manafort later. He could pardon Manafort. Flynn's son's pretty much asking Trump to pardon Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
There's some legal information that some of you guys probably aren't aware of, and that is that a sitting president cannot impeach anyone if that crime is related.
You mean pardon? Right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Pardon anybody unless that crime is related. If that crime is related to their...
Brian's struggling a little bit today.
I'm tired. I had a long weekend.
He had a vacation over the weekend, so...
Okay, so for instance, if Trump is impeached for conspiring with Russia and that crime involves Michael Flynn, he cannot pardon Michael Flynn once that impeachment takes place. So if Congress votes to impeach him, he can no longer pardon Manafort or Flynn if they're related to the crime that he's been being impeached
That's
for.
Interesting. I didn't know
So technically, if Robert Mueller were to charge Manafort with a series of crimes, Congress could immediately get together, vote for impeachment, and then Trump can't pardon Manafort.
So wait, repeat that again. So
any crime that if once the president is impeached, any crime related to that impeachment is no longer pardonable.
Okay.
So it's not if he's convicted in the impeachment. It's just if the House votes 51% to impeach Trump, and that impeachment is related to crimes that are connected to the pardonable parties, those pardons cannot take place.
So it doesn't even have to be... He doesn't have to be kicked out of office through the Senate as long as the House impeaches him?
Correct.
And votes to impeach?
Once the impeachment proceedings are underway.
What happens if the impeachment proceedings are underway and it's voted down in the Senate and he's not kicked out of office?
He could come back and then pardon him.
Okay. So that's an interesting tidbit of news that I wasn't aware of.
Yes, so that's one of the reasons why Manafort may not be pardoned. The other thing that he has to be concerned about is there's probably state crimes. He's a resident in New York. We know Schneiderman's working on it.
Schneiderman's the Attorney General in the state of New York. For those
So
who are unaware,
it's very possible that it's very possible he's investigating Manafort on crimes as well. And if Trump was to pardon Manafort, then there could be state charges.
I mean, only time's going to tell, but things are getting interesting every day. We haven't really talked about the 13 indictments in Russia, have we?
No, that came down.
So on Friday, I'm sure most of you or all of you are aware, Robert Mueller handed down indictments of 13 Russian nationals, as well as 3 companies or entities in Russia.
Yes.
It basically shows that Russia interfered in our elections, something most of us probably assume, but Trump has adamantly denied, or he claims he hasn't denied it, but he has denied it. And a lot of people on the right have denied it. So Trump and his supporters, or Sean Hannity and Judge Jeannie on Fox News, they're all kind of pushing the idea that this latest set of indictments proves that there was no collusion. And that couldn't be farther from the truth.
Well, the reason they're saying that is because Rosenstein, when he gave his press briefing following the indictments, he said that this indictment does not accuse any Americans of knowingly working with the Russians.
And that this indictment doesn't say that Russia actually influenced the results of the election. But you got to listen to what he said, and he said this indictment.
Well, and just to show that language is not going to move forward past that point, is hours later an American was indicted for working with the Russians.
Who you talking about?
Well, hours later, I'm not certain of the guy's name. There was an American man who was indicted for pretty much conspiring with the Russians.
Yeah, so there's that theory, but it's interesting the way Rod Rosenstein went about that, and Robert Mueller too, I think.
Oh yeah, and you know that this is going to be an underlying indictment that they're going to probably base all future indictments on.
I think it's interesting because the way the indictment was written kind of makes it so it's impossible for Trump to fire Rosenstein, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
because if you fire Rosenstein if you fire Rosenstein in a way to halt the Mueller investigation, you're basically saying you want to halt the indictment of these Russians and the investigation into Russia's collusion and attack, which Russia referred to as information warfare. And if you say that, it's like you're basically saying you're siding with Russia over the security of the United States. And anybody who supports that is going to be deemed a traitor.
Mueller seems to be genius in this, and he knows when to roll out indictments, when to announce information, and this puts Trump into a corner. He's not going to be able to fire Rosenstein without making it look atrocious.
In my opinion, it would be worse than the Saturday Night Massacre.
Oh, absolutely, because you're backing another nation.
But at the same time, I feel like if Trump did it, so much of the GOP Congress would be okay with it, and I don't think they would vote to impeach him if he did that.
I'm not going to.
Which isn't. It's so wrong. It's worse than Nixon, but since the GOP is so much in Trump's pocket, they're just going to fight to back him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that Trump is going to have very little options to deal with the investigation now, and I think that from here it's going to get significantly worse from him. I think that indictments of Americans are forthcoming. Indictments of campaign associates and campaign members are coming, and I think it's going to happen sooner than many of you likely believe.
I still think the major indictments are going to come after the midterm elections. I don't think Mueller wants to mess with that. I don't think he wants to be seen as kind of supporting the Democrats by releasing all the stuff that might be harmful to the GOP. I think he wants to wait until.
I don't know. I think that Mueller's just going to do what he does and not worry about any of that. That's what he's been doing throughout his career. I don't think he's going to be concerned over how American public's going to take it from a political standpoint. I think,
but at the same time, if he hands down a referral with indictments, don't you think it would be more in his interest to have a new Congress vote rather than this current Congress that I personally feel is a bit on the corrupt side?
I don't disagree with you there. I just don't know if he's going to hold off. I mean, basically, we possibly have a president in office who is compromised by a hostile foreign power. So deciding to hold off on something like that because of political reasons might not be what he sees as in the best interest of the country.
So while all this happens with these indictments and basically proof that Russia messed with our elections, sanctions still aren't implemented. I saw a commenter here on the chat asked us to speak about sanctions, and it's ridiculous. There's been no mention of the sanctions since Congress voted to impose them. Since the deadline came and went, Trump has not mentioned anything.
Which has been, like 200 days now, I think it's been?
Since the vote, or since... Well, the deadline was just recently.
Since the vote, I mean.
But this basically solidifies the case of why sanctions need to be implemented against Russia. It basically shows that the Russians were conspiring amongst themselves, at least. Whether Americans were involved or not, we can't say for sure yet. But
one American.
They were attacking the U.S. And it was a form of warfare. Even the Russians referred to it as information warfare. Yet Trump refuses to punish them. And he refused to even address why he's not punishing them, which I think is even worse, because he's just acting like it's not even an option. And I think Congress needs to really get on Trump for this, and get on the White House for this. And I think the senators all need to do that too. And
Democrats and Republicans, because Democrats could be speaking up more about this as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm surprised you see so few Democrats actually speaking up about this issue.
It's a law. He signed a new law, and he's not followed through with the law.
Yeah, exactly. He's breaking the law in order to benefit Russia, which, in my mind, could be considered treason. Why would you support a foreign adversary over your own country? And meanwhile, he's not implementing sanctions, but that's not even the worst part. He's not doing anything or instructing his intelligence agencies to do anything to protect our elections in 2018, which are months away.
Could you imagine if these 13 Russians were indicted for attacking our democracy, and President Obama didn't even hold a press conference to lash out at the Kremlin about it? Could you imagine that? President Trump hasn't even criticized the Kremlin, hasn't come out publicly, given a press conference, or even just a public statement, and criticized the Kremlin for basically attacking our democracy. And if you're not upset about that, then
breaking news: Donald Trump just tweeted, "Obama was president up to and beyond the 2016 election. So why didn't he do something about Russian meddling?" So Trump's wondering why Obama didn't do anything about Russian meddling, since they had been meddling they had this plan moving forward since 2014 to meddle in the election. And as you all know, Obama did do something about it. It's just he didn't announce it publicly that it was going on, because he feared that the right would say that he was trying to influence the election.
Well, actually, President Obama had planned to come out and issue a public statement expressing worry that the Russians were trying to influence the election. And Mitch McConnell, the Senate minority leader at the time, basically told him that if he did that, he would accuse Obama of politicizing it and making a statement for political gain in the whole election process.
Imagine what would have happened. You saw what happened with Hillary when the FBI came out and said Hillary's under investigation again for her email server. You saw what happened. It cost her votes. Imagine if Obama came out days or maybe weeks before the election and said that President Trump Russia is running a campaign over social media to help Trump win the election. Russia is pushing to help Trump win the election because Trump's going to be beneficial to them. Imagine what the right would have said.
Imagine what Trump would have said. You know, he would have declared himself a victor in that.
Yeah,
that basically Obama's working with Hillary to make sure he loses.
There's no way that would have went over right with the right, and it was so. Instead, Obama worked with the FBI. He wanted updates to make sure they were investigating this properly, and said, okay, basically, this will be an investigation. He probably knew eventually something bigger would come about, such as a special counsel like Robert Mueller, and we'll just deal with it after the fact. I don't think Obama thought Trump was going to win the election, and I think I think if he thought Trump was going to win an election, he would have done something more.
Actually, Jay Johnson, the director of Homeland Security under Obama, was on Morning Joe this morning, and he pretty much said the same thing. He basically admitted that Obama had figured that Hillary would have won, so he kind of took a step back and didn't go out with a public statement. But one of the key things that really played into his decision was the fact that Trump's there calling the election rigged. So if Obama went out and said something, it would have verified that the election was rigged in Trump voters' minds.
Yeah, there was no. I don't think Obama could have done anything differently that would have changed anything here. If he did come out and say that, would Trump have lost the election? I don't think he would have. And you know, it's hard to say, but
they would have used it against Hillary. And
yeah, imagine if Hillary won the election, and then the right and Trump basically says that's because Obama said Russia was interfering with our elections, and then the FBI proves it, and then the right does the exact same thing they're doing right now and criticizes the FBI and says that they're the deep state, and Hillary and Obama are part of this deep state. That's what they're going to say. No. And there's no winning. Obama did what he thought was the right thing to do at the time, and if he could go back and do anything different, I don't even know if he would change it.
Yeah, there was an interesting article this morning in the Washington Post, and it was basically they interviewed a Russian troll that was working for the agency that was one of the agencies indicted. This guy worked for them for several months and then left the job. He said he did it because he needed money desperately. They were paying approximately $700 a month. It really gave a lot of insight into the operation. Basically, he said that there were teams of 3 trolls. One of them was someone who would take a negative view of something. One of them was a positive view, and the third person was someone who would eventually take the positive view. Positive meaning if they were in favor of Trump. So basically, they argue back and forth, and at the end, all 3 would agree. Oh yeah, Trump is the greatest, or Trump did this, or Trump did that, and it was just a whole. He said it was basically like a play, and they would give him pretty much not a script. They give him topics that he had to kind of portray and to convince people about, and then he'd have to kind of write his own script. And they had to do this in articles on social media. I think it was mostly article comments and social media. And they said that his quota was basically 150 posts of at least 200 characters. And they would work 12-hour shifts between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. and usually 2 days on, 2 days off. And he said there were hundreds and hundreds of people. It was in an office building, 4 levels of the office building.
Where was this taking in Russia?
I believe it was St. Petersburg. There were 4 levels. There was a certain section for Facebook. There's a certain section to influence Russians. There's a certain section to influence Americans. This guy worked for the one influencing Russians primarily, but he was in communication. He had lunch breaks, cigarette breaks. He was in communication with those working in the Facebook department. And basically those in the Facebook department got paid twice as much, $1,400 a month, but you had to have impeccable English skills. And he applied for that job, but his English was not good enough. And
well, Well, a lot of people refer to Russian bots on Twitter and Facebook, and they're not really bots. They use bots in order to create the accounts. Basically, it's automated systems that create multiple Twitter accounts. But once these accounts are created, I don't think the majority of them are actually being automated.
No, they aren't.
They're being run by Russian trolls, which are basically people in Russia sitting in warehouses or office buildings tweeting. It's real people, but people who are working for these companies who are working for the Russian government in order to put out propaganda in favor of the Russian government or against the government here in America. So they're not. When you hear the term Russian bot, they're not really bots. They're actually Russian trolls, and that's really what it is. That's really the accounts on Twitter and Facebook that have been influencing the election. They're the accounts you're going to see criticizing Democrats, responding to our tweets. They're Russian trolls. They're being paid. That's their job. Their job is to come out and talk about stuff and criticize people and respond to anti-Trump people and pro-Trump people.
Yeah, their job is to kind of change a narrative and to influence everyday people, Americans in this case, by eventually agreeing with each other after an argument takes place. And that's a lot of what people believe is by reading what other people's opinions are and how those opinions adapt with new facts. And that's exactly what happened. And this individual that the Washington Post interviewed said that it seemed to work much better on Americans than it did on Russians because Russians are used to this kind of thing and Americans are not.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's like in Russia, there's the state-run media, so they're used to having to use their mind in order to decipher what's real and what's not real. And the whole fake news thing, the whole fake news phrase that Trump uses all the time, that's basically you get people not believing the real news and believing the fake news. When he calls stuff fake news, that way real fake news loses its fake value. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you call somebody a liar, if you call somebody else a liar enough, and then they start calling you a liar, people are gonna not believe that you're a liar because they're gonna think he's a liar too. It's a game. It's really
it's basically gaslighting. And for anybody that doesn't know what gaslighting is, many politicians and dictators in the past have used it, and it's basically you attack your opponents, you attack other people with lies, so that when you lie, it's all lost. People lose a sense of reality. And that's exactly what happens. People don't know what's real and what's fake anymore,
or they don't care because you can't trust anything. And that's where we've gotten to it. We've gotten to a state where you really can't trust anything you hear, especially on social media. You just can't trust it because you don't know if it's coming from a legitimate source or if it's just coming from a made-up source.
But you can trust it if you do your due diligence. And if you just Google the story, see where the sources are, see what's backing up the story, and you can figure out for yourself if you think for yourself and you don't rely on Fox News or other media outlets to think for you, then you'll understand what's happening. But so many people are letting these outlets think for them because they're lazy maybe or because it suits their narrative better.
All right, there's a few other things I wanted to touch on. Actually, one other thing other than the Krassenstein Live hashtag, Mitt Romney. What do you think about Mitt Romney? For those who don't know, announced that he's going to run for the U.S. Senate seat currently held by Orrin Hatch in the state of Utah, and there's the Republicans are kind of upset about this. Democrats are kind of upset about this. What's your thoughts?
Compared to other Republicans, I like Mitt Romney. I think he's more moderate. I think he kind of aims towards the center more often than not. I think that it's going to be good to fight Trump because he's not going to instantly take Trump's side like so many Republicans.
Hopefully not. I mean, that's how it seems. And I hope he maintains that method.
Well, even better would be for the Democrat to beat Romney.
I don't think that's going to
happen. No, I doubt it will.
I think it's pretty much a given that Romney's going to win that seat. There's a lot of people who are mad who say that he doesn't really live in Utah, so he shouldn't be a senator there. He was a governor of Massachusetts. I in my opinion, I think it's good.
it's better than having Hatch there,
Yeah.
who told Trump that he was a better president than Lincoln in Washington.
And I think Romney does what's in his heart, whether you agree with what his heart says or not. I think he's doing what he feels is the best for this country. So, I mean, you don't have to agree with what he thinks is the best for this country, but I don't think he's going to let the NRA influence him. I don't think he's going to let others influence him. He's already a very wealthy person.
Well, let's hope that's the case. I kind of find it interesting that nobody's telling him to step aside or go knit like they're telling Hillary Clinton to do. I mean, he's had his time running as president, so has Hillary Clinton, but everybody seems to think that Clinton should just go away. I'm not a huge Clinton fan. I voted for her, but I think that her voice is very important still.
Well, if you recall, Mitt Romney actually considered a run against Trump. After Trump won the primaries, Romney actually came along, right? Yep. And people thought if Romney ran, he would have won the election. He would have beat Trump, So, and Trump had some rather nasty things to say about Romney, and Romney has said a lot of nasty things about Trump. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they can find common ground, or if he continues to just kind of go against Trump. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
Yeah, no.
It'll be interesting to see if Trump actually backs Romney as a senator. Yeah. Does he endorse Romney? He's not going to endorse a Democrat, but does he just ignore Romney, or is he actually going to endorse him?
I could see him remaining silent and backing other candidates more so, but I guess we'll find out.
All right, should we take some more of these Krassenstein Live hashtags?
He's so greedy, it's not true. Somebody said Romney is a human being compared to Trump. Trump is owned by Russia. I don't totally disagree with any of those comments.
Jacqueline asks, with all the info publicly available, do you think Trump should be arrested so in the end we have settled law?
The information that's publicly available hasn't been any hard evidence yet. We only have circumstantial evidence and knowing that these people communicate with Russia, these emails were sent. I'm sure Mueller has a boatload of other information, emails, communications, phone conversations, perhaps undercover undercover informants who are working for him. We don't have enough information to say that he should be in jail quite yet.
Yeah, so it really depends.
Do I think that they're going to come out with information that's going to show that Trump deserves to be in prison? I absolutely do, and I believe that probably since January. January.
There's so much
January 2017
there's a lot of hearsay out there. There's a lot of information out there, but it's all about connecting the dots, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, there's all different ways this can go. Some could say that he's maybe money laundered. I mean, it can go in all different directions, and we don't have information that you guys don't have. We're going by what's available to the public, and right now we don't. If there's hard evidence that he should be in prison right now, there'd be probably a little bit more outcry, and maybe some within the GOP switching sides. But
I don't know.
Can he talk about Bannon's reluctance to answer questions? I don't. The whole House Intelligence interview. I'm not certain what to think of that.
Yeah, because he did. It's reported that he spent 20 hours with Robert Mueller, and he answered all of Mueller's questions, according to reports.
Well, he probably he probably hung out with Mueller for 3 or 4 days, probably 8-hour sessions.
I don't know if I'd call it hanging out.
Anyway, I almost want to think that he gave his testimony to Mueller under oath, and perhaps he's not willing to speak with the House Intel Committee for a reason, and that reason might be because he doesn't want them knowing what he told Mueller, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean,
you got Devin Nunes in there.
we don't know. Maybe Mueller asked him to speak as or not say as much as he can.
Yeah,
we don't know the whole story, so.
Yeah, the ranking member of the House Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, he seems to be quite upset at the fact that Bannon hasn't said anything, but he wouldn't know what Mueller was told or what Mueller told Bannon either. So it's hard to really understand what's going on there.
Well, at this point, I feel like the House and Senate Intel committees, it's pointless, their investigation, because what it's going to come down is Robert Mueller finishing his investigation with all the resources in the world and then giving a referral to the House, which can be used to impeach. And then that's when the House and the Senate is going to have all the information right when Mueller releases it to them. So, the hearings in between...
It's kind of pointless. I agree. The special counsel kind of supersedes all that, kind of is combining all those investigations.
Well, at the same time, I think maybe it's good so that they can find the crimes that may have been committed by themselves, so that when Mueller does hand down a referral, there's no question as to its legitimacy.
Well, also you got to figure that the House is responsible for voting for impeachment, and the Senate's responsible for an indictment, basically conviction, once he's impeached.
Yeah, the House is the impeachment, which is equated to an indictment, and then the Senate acts as the jurors to get the conviction.
So the fact that they're doing these investigations means that they're going to be prepared once an impeachment.
They'll be more prepared. I think that's the important part with that.
Somebody asked to discuss the White House's security clearances. I don't know. I think it's insane that they have all these temporary security clearances. Jared Kushner seems to be asking for the most classified information, and he doesn't even have clearance.
And it seems like he's going to be the next one who's indicted, possibly at least. He went out and hired a PR firm for. What is it? A special PR firm that deals with, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
Public image or something?
Well, like catastrophe, basically. Like knowing that you're going to be indicted at some point. So I think he's expecting that, and I don't think he should have security clearances. Well, he's probably...
Well, that's a given. I mean, why is he even in the White House any longer? It's just because he's a relative. And like Ed said, I think that probably Kushner, maybe Don Jr. They're both very likely to be indicted next, in my opinion. But once again, I mean, we don't have all the information, but
those indictments could end up coming down at the exact same time as a referral for Trump's impeachment comes down.
Well, yeah, you don't know. So will Ivanka go down? Somebody asked.
We don't know what Mueller has and what he doesn't have. I guess anything's possible.
I think it really depends on how wide this investigation spreads. If it turns to money laundering or their businesses, who knows?
I don't recall seeing anything that seems criminal by Ivanka, but who knows what Mueller has? I'm sure people said the same thing about Nixon for a while too. It's just we gotta wait and see what comes out.
Do you guys think that Trump will engage in a war with North Korea to distract from Russia somewhere? This is one of my worries.
My worst fear, I think.
I think that you saw how he acted this weekend after finding out about the indictments and Rick Gates' possible plea, and it seems like he's getting more and more unhinged. It seems like it wouldn't surprise me if he lashed out and did something like attack North Korea in order to deflect the attention away from Trump Russia and perhaps try and get America on his side. At times of war, people's opinions on things change, and I could see him thinking that a war would actually help him.
Me too. I think it's scary. I hope his generals and everyone around him are ready to try and stop this if that does happen.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a war in Iraq. This is a war with a nuclear power who's threatening tens of thousands of our troops in South Korea, literally literally tens of miles away, and you think that a nuclear war could happen in such a condensed, populated area like that is scary. Not to mention their ability to actually fire nuclear weapons towards the United States mainland.
Yeah, that's definitely a scary thought. Anyone else have any questions? I don't think we have too much more to talk about. Be happy to answer some questions though.
How come there aren't any photos of you guys attending protests or marches? We've attended protests before. Nothing major.
There's not really too much stuff in our area.
We
live in a very red area.
We're in Southwest Florida. We're kind of away from everything. I don't really have anything else to say there. If there was a protest in my area tomorrow, I'd be there. I don't know if I'll be taking photos or not. We also both have families. We're trying to concentrate on social media right now. But if there's anything going on, let me know, and I'll be sure to try and get there.
Yeah, I agree with Brian.
Somebody said Don Jr. isn't being charged because Trump will pardon his child. Patience. And I agree with that. I think that Mueller may be waiting on that.
Well, like you said earlier, maybe he's waiting for an impeachment so that he can do that. He'll hand down referrals first, and then that show that Trump should be impeached, and then the indictment will come.
Which means we might have a long way before they're indicted.
Or maybe the New York State's looking into something. Or who knows, maybe he won't be indicted. I mean, I'm not going to go out and say anything with certainty.
Yeah, and I know somebody said it's hard waiting on Mueller, and it is, especially when in my mind, I'm certain that Trump has broken the law on many occasions. There's something not right. He's obvious. It's clear to me that he has colluded with Russia to influence the election. What his main goal there was, I don't know. But when you're so certain of something like this, it's hard to wait for the law to come and actually.
Yeah, well, you got to keep in mind how long it took for Nixon to get impeached, and how long it took for all that information to come out.
And that wasn't nearly as detrimental to the country and our democracy.
Oh, yeah. There's another question somebody asked: where can I purchase the Ronald Plump book? For those who don't know, I guess it was about 4 months ago, we had a Kickstarter for a children's book we were writing called "How the People Plumped Ronald Plump," and the Kickstarter ended up, we set the bar pretty high on funding the project, and it didn't get funded. But the book has been written, and our illustrator actually just finished the last illustration today, and we plan on publishing it.
Yeah,
it should be available on Amazon.
We haven't really been talking about it much because I know that those on the right are going to say, "Oh, you're doing this all to make money," and that's the least. We're not going to. Basically, we're going to sell the book for a few dollars more than what it's costing us, and that's not our intention at all. Our intention is to get it published for our kids, pretty much.
Yeah, well, it's a children's book, but it's meant to be humorous to adults. It's going to teach your kids a lesson, but at the same time,
it's not too political.
It's not too political. It's going to teach your kids a lesson about being a good person, basically. And at the same time, the parents are going to get a kick out of it. We feel the illustrations are really funny, and our illustrator, what's his name?
Benny Radiani.
Yeah, he did a really good job.
Liberals are always going to have excuses to waste time and our money. I don't really have any comment on that. I think it's just kind of...
Oh, you mean like wasting money, like the Benghazi hearings that lasted forever? Kind of like that?
Apparently. Do you think Putin will ever give up whatever he has on Trump? We don't know what he has on Trump. I mean, it's possible he doesn't have anything, but Trump's actions make it seem as if there's some kind of compromise. Do I think he'll release it? I think that doing so would kind of relinquish all power he has over Trump. So I don't know.
Yeah, and at the same time, you got to keep in mind that his goal is to sow discourse in this country, and right now, Trump's causing that discourse. So I think he just wants Trump to be in office, maybe remove the or not implement the sanctions, maybe remove some previous sanctions. And other than that, your guess is as good as ours.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
You
I guess
think
we could
close
probably
things
wrap
out?
it up now. We'll try and do another one of these probably later this week, maybe even tomorrow if there's enough news to discuss. We really thank you all for watching us. We're hoping to just get the message out there and kind of educate you guys on what's going on.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow us on Periscope. I know some of you are probably watching via Twitter, but if you go to periscope.tv, you can follow us by just type Krassenstein in the search bar, and then you should get our account that says Ed and Bride Krassenstein Talk Trump. Then you can follow us, so every time that we go live, you get a notification. Might be helpful.
Yeah, and if not, you can watch all these back at the Periscope page. You don't have to watch us live. You just
and I'm also I've been putting them on YouTube. You can find all of our previous episodes on YouTube. I think this is our 4th episode. I haven't really done much with the YouTube channel yet, but I plan to in the future. Also follow us on Twitter. Brian is at Krassenstein, and I'm at Ed Krassen, EDKRASSEN. Yeah, follow us, and we'll be back soon.
Yep.
Thanks for watching.